to love God?
Definitely.
Great. Go ahead. Jai Baba.
Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. How to love God. To love God in the most practical way is to love our fellow beings. If we feel for others in the same way as we feel for our own dear ones, we love God. If instead of seeing faults in others, we look within ourselves, we are loving God. If instead of robbing others to help ourselves, we rob ourselves to help others, we are loving God. If we suffer in the suffering of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, we are loving God. If instead of worrying over our own misfortunes, we think of ourselves more fortunate than many, many others, we are loving God. If we endure our lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. If we understand and feel that the greatest act of devotion and worship to God is not to hurt or harm any of His beings, we are loving God. To love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of all life is to love God and find Himself as our own self. Avatar Meher Baba Jai.
Meher Baba ki Jai. So, any points of discussion or insights from our last read?
I was
Ashok,
not there.
Ravi. Yeah, I remember. You're not there. Ashok and Ravi who were there. Soma. Anything that we need to discuss? Honestly, I was in and out. I was on the move, if you recollect. So I don't. I should be honest. I was not there fully on that session. So if there's nothing, I think we stopped here, right? 182, and we are continuing with Jiva and Shiva. Correct, Ashok?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Okay. So let's continue from that point. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai.
Ki Jai.
Jiva and Shiva. Infinite intelligence is equal to Paramatma, which is God, the oversoul. The infinite consciousness is equal to soul in the beyond. Aham Brahmasmi. Infinite mind with real infinite thinking is equal to Atma. Individual soul equal to Shiva, Aham Brahmasmi, and Sahaj Samadhi. Infinite mind with false infinite thinking is equal to Jiva, individual soul embodied as man, Jivatma. Let me go back and read this so that we register it, as we might have to go use this further on. I'll go from the bottom this time. Infinite mind with false infinite thinking is Jiva, individual soul embodied as man, also known as Jivatma.
That is we are
Infinite,
all, right? That
that's
is
all of
human
us.
beings. Yeah. Okay.
Most of us on this call. Infinite mind with real infinite thinking equal to Atma. Individual soul equal to Shiva, Am Brahmasmi, and Sahaj Samadhi. Now, this is where it's a bit confusing. There is a comma in between. So, infinite mind with real infinite thinking is equal to Atma, which is nothing but the individual soul, which is equal to Shiva when it is in the Aham Brahmasmi and Sahaj Samadhi state. Is that what's being said?
Yeah, that is the Shivatma. Shivatma means the person who is alive in the physical body and gets God realization. They are called Shivatmas, Aham Brahmasmi state. They achieve Aham Brahmasmi state.
So
That is,
also referred to in, I think was it infinite intelligence? I'm sure in God speaks as Shivatma, correct?
Yeah, Shivatma.
Shivatma,
Either it can be all the Brahmibhuts
or
or
Zoops.
Jivan Muktas or yeah, all those people. Yeah, Mazoops. Yeah.
Yeah. So last is, yeah, or rather, first is infinite intelligence equal to Paramatma, God the Oversoul. The infinite consciousness equal to soul in the beyond. Aham Brahmasmi.
Yeah.
So let's park these three thoughts in the head. So infinite intelligence is nothing but soul in the beyond state, aham brahmasmi. Infinite mind with real infinite thinking is Shivatma. Infinite mind with false infinite thinking is Jivatma. I think that we can relate to. So with that, let's continue.
No, the first
Man,
one is the first
uh,
one
yeah,
is the beyond state of God, not the beyond state of God.
yeah, it's beyond state of God. I'm sorry if I, yeah,
Hmm.
by mistake said beyond. It is beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Mamaji.
But the first line refers to beyond state, is it? Infinite intelligence is equal to Paramatma, or it is beyond state.
It is beyond state.
Beyond state of God is
Paratpar
called
Parabrahma is beyond.
Okay.
beyond. Yeah.
Paramatma is beyond.
Karthik, I also like to read the first 4 lines of part 1 of God Speaks, because I think it is quite correlated, and there'll be lots of parts of God Speaks which are correlated with what we are reading.
You want to read it out now? Go ahead.
Yeah.
You have it
So,
handy, or should I get it?
yes, I have it handy. Yes.
Go ahead.
It's
Go
on
ahead. Go ahead.
page 1, part 1 of God Speaks, states of consciousness. All souls, Atmas, were, are, and will be in the Oversoul, Paramatma. Souls, Atmas are all one. All souls are infinite and eternal. They are formless. Of all souls are one. There is no difference in souls or in their being and existence as souls. So it's that part 1, page 1. I found it
Yeah.
very relevant in the sense that we'll have to. This is my way of correlating what is there in God Speaks with what we are reading. Yeah, it's page 1. Page 1.
Yeah. I'm getting there.
See here in the infinite nothing and everything, he's talking about qualitative aspect of different states. Qualitative means infinite intelligence, imagination, all those things. But in God Speaks, what you
I
just
agree.
read, as it is, as a
It's an
entity.
intro. So, and
Yeah.
it's an intro to. I mean, actually, it's a for many who are coming to this realm for the first time. He's throwing people into the deep sea, right?
Mm.
So he's laying out the canvas in the first page, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes.
So whereas, as Ravi said, what we are dealing with in nothing and everything right now is a lot more intensive and specific, whereas this is more broad and he's opening the shop basically in the first
Right.
page. He's saying,
Yes.
"Hey guys, this is what I'm going to be talking about."
Yes,
Right?
correct. Very
So,
interesting. Yes.
yeah. All right. Yeah. So let's continue. Man has three bodies. Manasika Sharira is the mental body. In brackets, mind thinking. Adhyatmik Sharira is the subtle body, energy active in brackets. And Bhautika Sharira is the gross body, physical form. When the infinite one does not think, he is in the state of beyond, which is Paratpar Parabrahma. When the infinite one does not think of the universe, but only of himself as God, the infinite consciousness, he is in the state of the beyond, which is Paramatma. When the infinite's mind's thinking is real, that he that is, he thinks of himself as real, Aham Brahmasmi, and thinks of his shadow, the universe, as illusory, he is in the state of Shiva, Sahad Samadhi. This is very, very simplified expansion. I'll actually read it again. When the infinite one does not think, he is in the state of the beyond beyond, Paratkar Parabrahma. When the infinite one does not think of the universe, but only of himself as God, the infinite consciousness, he is in the state of the beyond, which is Paramatma. When the infinite mind's thinking is real, that is, he thinks of himself as real, Aham Brahmasmi, and thinks of his shadow, the universe, as illusory, he is in the state of Shiva, Sahad Samadhi. Finally, when the infinite mind's thinking is false, man is in the state of Jiva, in bondage. I think this nails it, right? So the progression is false thinking, thinking of himself as real and as the shadow, thinking of himself only as God, then finally, no thinking.
Yeah. Just
Right?
the thought coming to my mind, Karthik, is
Mhm.
we are in the imagination. We are in the infinite thinking, right? So we form images in our mind. See,
Mhm.
if I ask you, do you know car? You say, yes, I know car. And if I ask you, what is that you know? You show another car and say, that is the car, right?
Mhm.
But actually, the car is not in our mind. It's only an image we formed in our mental frame. What is a car? And the thought comes. So,
Yeah.
like this, everything is an image. Even your own son or a daughter, they are images. That's it. They are not real people in your own self. They are just images you form. And there is a thinking behind it. That is, she is my daughter. If I show my daughter and say, she is my daughter. But I only have an image of that daughter. So everything what I have in my mind is imagination, and which is not real. Images are not real. It's just a shadow, right? Just not real. Whereas being God, one experiences the real infinite self. That is the difference between being a God versus being a human being.
Perfect. So actually, I will. Yeah, it's basically you're making the foundational point that everything is just delusion. It's perception. It's just your mind telling you something that there is. But
Yeah,
you also point out another thing that all our knowledge at this realm is only relative, right? As you're saying, the
correct.
car example. So
Yeah,
we do not have any absolute knowledge. Our knowledge is always relative, and hence all our learning is conditioned or due to the conditioned mind. We don't
yeah,
have any absolute knowledge. Yeah.
correct,
So
correct,
if you ask for something, we always go from the known to the unknown. A
correct.
car, which I have seen before, is the reference point for all cars,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth, right? So, yeah,
See,
good point.
even reading God Speaks or Meher Baba, for example. See, who is
Mhm.
Meher Baba? We see his image and we form an image in our mind. This is Meher Baba. This is, and then thought process comes and say he is God. He is real. These are all just a thinking part of us. There's not really an intellectual part of us, intellectualization of the truths.
Fair,
That's all. Yeah.
fair. Yeah. Let's continue further. As long as the jiva, the individual man, is in the state of false thinking, it is bound by its gross, subtle, and mental bodies according to the type of sanskaras of its imagination. The jiva assumes another human body, reincarnates, after the dropping of the previous body, which is death. When the sanskaras that form these bodies and make these bodies function are annihilated in nirvana, instantaneously the jiva stops experiencing the three worlds through the three bodies. The individual mind does not again contact imaginary sanskaras as false thinking comes to its end in the divine vacuum. When the individual mind's false thinking ends, the medium of function, the sanskaric connection between the mental, subtle, and the gross bodies is finished. Then Jiva realizes God, the infinite consciousness. If the individual man remains embodied after realization, he enters the state of Shiva, personifying the infinite mind. Shiva knows there is neither birth nor death, neither happiness nor misery, nor anything limiting. Shiva eternally is God, and his knowing this is knowledge.
Yeah.
So again, you just talked about this knowledge thing, which is what is the real knowledge. So the knowledge with the K is basically Shiva knowing this, and Shiva. I mean, the Jiva when he knows this becomes Shiva. So continuing, according to the connection of the accumulated sanskaras in one birth, and according to the good or bad experiences obtained by the Jivatma in that one lifetime, the infinite false thinking mind molds or fashions gross, subtle, and mental bodies for the next birth. As the Jivatma reincarnates, the change that occurs is that it has a different physical body caused by the new structure of the subtle body. Thus, every lifetime, new physical characteristics appear. In the states of heaven or hell, the good, bad, light, and heavy, natural, and unnatural gross sanskaras in the infinite false mind of the Jivatma are experienced subtly through the subtle body. The same subtle body is kept, but it changes in structure as the sanskaras balance to determine the condition of the physical body in the next life. In this manner, the infinite false thinking mind continues having good or bad, natural or unnatural experiences according to the opposite experiences of the last birth. The previous opposite experiences of good or bad determine the Jivatma's present physical circumstances of happiness or misery, and the natural or unnatural sanskaras determine the human mind's makeup. The infinite false thinking mind has this reincarnation experience through the creation of false thoughts in its imagination. Thereby, the mind gathers imaginary sanskaras. In this way, the imaginary adventure of living as different people in different ages for millions of lives goes on and on. In the process, I pause here. Any thoughts?
I just thought it's very interesting, the facts they're talking about. So we have been there for millions and millions of years. We don't know that.
Yeah.
We have no memory of all those experiences we had.
And thank God for that.
Thank God for that.
Imagine the situation. I have had this thought exercise multiple times, right? If you do not have this reset of memory, which works very beautifully at the end of the dropping of the body, it's chaotic. How I know that the subtle body, I mean the mental body carries all of it. But then imagine if we were in the waking state able to keep the memories of all of that intact. You just go crazy,
Yeah.
right? We'd see our enemies in other forms. We'll see we will remember the anxieties that you have experienced in another birth. We will relate to that. I mean, it is just chaotic.
Every day when
Yeah.
I turn on the television, they talk about the Ukrainian, how the people of Ukrainians are suffering, you know. And then if you think, have we ever been in that situation? Maybe we have. Right now, our life is so comfortable. Nothing is happening to us. We are eating, going to work, and being happy, enjoying. But look at any family that are living in the Kiev, how things changed overnight for them.
Yeah.
They're just walking with nothing in their hands.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Did I hear Sanjay ji say something?
Jai Baba, Sanjay.
Yeah, Jai Baba, Jai Baba. And it also makes us that we also have been connected to our previous lives, that we are sitting together talking about that.
Undoubtedly, but
Yeah.
in a way where we are not able to discover it in this birth. If we were able to discover,
Yeah,
and
that's the beauty, na? Then there'll be no element of surprise, no?
exactly. So
And there will be
when
so
we
much
are
of history to
in
carry.
our subtle and mental bodies, maybe we will remember the connections and have a good laugh like we had now.
Okay. Yeah. Jai Baba.
Absolutely. Jai Baba. I continue. In the process of reincarnation, the experience of the world is gained by the human mind's thinking of imagination. Therefore, the mental, subtle, and gross experiences of the world, happiness and misery, pleasure and pain, health and sickness, ecstasy and agony, birth and death, all are imaginary, an illusion of endless opposites, a dream with innumerable absurdities, nothing. Despite this false thinking, the infinite mind experiences neither happiness nor misery, nor passes through any birth or death, nor in the end makes any journey of 14, nor in the end makes any journey of 14 adventures. This phenomena, called world or universe or cosmos, is the outcome of false thinking, that is, the false ego. This universe is nothing but the thinking of the false ego, and due to its false thinking, the imaginary mental, subtle, and gross bodies are in a state of happiness or suffering, naturalness or unnaturalness, experiencing the world or the planes, and passing through the seemingly unbreakable chain of births and deaths. All that is happening is according to the imaginary sanskaras, gross, subtle, or mental, which the false ego mind collects due to its false thinking process. Therefore, the infinite mind, when completely realized as the infinite intelligence in the states of nirvana and nirvikalpa samadhi, is beyond all illusory phenomena in the three universes. Infinite intelligence has no birth or death. It has no joy or sorrow. It has no limitation and no limit. To accumulate sanskaras in imagination and to pass through the different forms is all nothing, an imagination, and therefore false. The experience gained through the gross body of the gross world, the experience through the subtle body of the subtle planes, and through the mental body of the mental planes is an accumulation of sanskaras. Thus, infinite false thinking continues.
So, Karthik, I just want to add, it's like a movie, a shadow. We are all living in a movie. What has been, I think, discussed earlier, also mentioned by Kama, that it's all like a movie. The
Correct.
the word of duality is like a
Yeah.
movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, movie is a good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, we go to the same theater, and how many times, we have different emotions there. If you see a funny movie, we enjoy. Sometimes we see sorrowful movie, and then we cry. Uh, Different kinds of emotions we go through, and once the movie stops, it's just a white screen, right?
Yeah.
So it's the similar situation for us.
We are actually in the state where the white screen is not. I mean, we are actually seeing the movie. So, as we go through the experience of the movie, quite often we identify with one of the participants and get lost in it. And that's where we are right now.
Hmm.
Yep. So, again, the concept he's talking about is this false thinking being at the core of everything, and false thinking and false imagination, which is illusory. So it is through the process of infinite false thinking that infinite intelligence creates imaginary bodies, and through these gross, subtle, and mental bodies, experiences imaginary happiness, pleasure in the world, or bliss and intoxication in the planes. Through the medium of the gross body, infinite intelligence thinks the gross world to be gross, physical or material, and it experiences pleasure or pain. Through the medium of the subtle body, it thinks the subtle body to be subtle, gaseous, and experiences planes of energy or powers. Through the medium of the mental body, it thinks the mental body to be mental, mind, and experiences planes of thought and feeling. Infinite intelligence assumes an imaginary gross body, uses it, and after its death, its disproportionate sanskaras are used up in heaven or hell, and it takes another human body. The reincarnation process goes on and on, millions of times. The subtle body does not die when the human body dies. It is kept alive by the sanskaras and changes while in the subtle states of heaven or hell. The imaginary sanskaras in the mental body, the seeds, compel the subtle body to have another gross body. The seeds compel the subtle to germinate into form. Consequently, the process of false thinking is reborn, meaning the infinite false mind in man adopts a new trend through his sanskaras in the subtle body. Somebody needs to mute their mic. Consequently, the process of false thinking is reborn, meaning the infinite false mind in man adopts a new trend through his sanskaras in the subtle body, which changes its form. I need to take a pause for a minute, please. Apologies. So, yeah, we were at the line where I just finished this page. So I will go up. According to this changed subtle form, by balancing of the sanskaras in heaven or hell, the subtle body takes a new physical body to serve as its gross medium. Thus, the subtle body is born in the human form. This rebirth of the subtle body is due to the false limited mind, meaning the sanskaras in seed form in the mind. The mind is born once as it enters creation, as the drop soul emerges out of the Om point, and the mind dies once, annihilation in nirvana. Key point being made. Infinite mind is realized as it enters nirvikalpa. The soul is never reborn. I think there are two statements made here. So the first statement is the mind dies in nirvana, but infinite mind is realized as it enters nirvikalpa. So infinite mind is this or rather comes into existence or is discovered at the stage of nirvana, but in nirvikalpa, the actual death of the individual mind happens. Right? So just as a
I compare our mind with what is that peanut groundnut with jaggery balls they make, right? What do you call them? With peanuts, groundnuts. In India they call it groundnuts. Groundnuts. When you eat all the groundnuts, where is that that round ball? It doesn't exist anymore. So just like that, if all the sanskaras are gone, the mind is only a receptacle for all the sanskaras. So the mind doesn't exist anymore. That's what happens in the nirvana.
nirvana.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just
There
upheld by.
there is a
Go
subtle
ahead.
difference. As you read in Nirvana, there is emptying, there is shunya, or totally devoid of all sanskaras, imaginations, everything.
Divine
But the
vacuum.
next vacuum. So, but the next stage is realization.
Mhm.
Infinite mind is realized as it enters nirvikalpa. This is where Buddha stopped and things moved ahead
Right.
by others. Yes.
Yeah. So nirvana is a state of prerequisite to get God realization.
Yes.
Yeah, so nirvana is the ending of the false ego, the ending of the imagination, and at that point, the infinite mind starts emerging, and that is the nirvikalpa. Yeah,
Yeah. Only when you have a physical body. This happens only when you have a physical body.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Infinite mind is realized as it enters nirvikalpa. The soul is never reborn. It is neither born nor dies. It is immortal and eternal. The rebirth of man is of his subtle body, forming a new gross body due to the thinking of the false limited mind. The self, soul, through consciousness, reads the book of nature, which contains all gross, subtle, and mental bodies and worlds. The infinite intelligence reads the book of imagination through the process of infinite false thinking. Infinite intelligence completes reading one page from the book of nature and then starts another, as after having finished one imaginary experience, it begins another and then another. The infinite intelligence continues doing all of this seemingly ad infinitum until the whole book is read. After reading to the end and knowing the conclusion, the infinite intelligence puts the book aside and stands up. Now, the reading material is finished. And with the book's end, the three worlds of matter, energy, and mind become visible. The three worlds vanish
Become
simultaneously.
invisible.
Become invisible, and the three worlds vanish simultaneously. Thank you and sorry. The three worlds vanish simultaneously because their existence is only in the book of imagination. Then the infinite intelligence becomes conscious of its infinity, and for the infinite mind, there is no more scope for imagination. It knows the end. As long as the mind thinks of imaginary things, imaginary sanskaras are amassed. These gross, subtle, and mental sanskaras, in turn, force the infinite intelligence to keep thinking. When the imaginary sanskaras are wiped out, mind does not think, it does not imagine, it does not dream. The mind's limitedness and limits are broken down by confronting the unlimited, the infinite mind. And with this breaking, the limited is at an end. Then only the infinite mind remains. And then only the infinite mind remains, and it becomes infinitely conscious of reality. In the interim, the sanskaras only act as a limit to the infinite mind, and this limit forms a veil between God, the infinite one, and man, the finite one. It is only these sanskaras that give the human mind the experience of limitedness by actions, words, and thoughts, and keep the mind limited. When all sanskaras are wiped out in nirvana, limitedness goes forever, and the experience of infinity is gained in nirvikalpa. The self is found. Jiva and Shiva. So that's the chapter. From there, we can go to realization of self.
So the goal is for Jiva to become Shiva. That is the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Read the book, go to the end, and then the book doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
It's talking about the interim stage from the subtle mental and gross body to a state where you have from duality to reality. It's very well explained.
Yeah.
Any other points or questions before we go to the next one?
I just wanted to highlight, we have put a reference from the Mehrabad journal about nirvana and nirvikalpa. So I mean that is relevant here also. What is the difference between nirvana and nirvikalpa? And nirvana being one of the interim stages towards nirvikalpa samadhi.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mamaji?
I just thought that end of all imagination is nirvana, realization is nirvikalpa.
Mm.
So that subtle difference is not so clear right now. So we can understand
I would go to the point. I mean, I would contrast that to say it's not a subtle difference, it's a vast difference.
Vast difference, but that is not getting realized right now. Okay.
That's because you're
Because
probably in nirvana. You're not yet right. No, let's read those first three lines again, maybe, and see if it makes sense now, right? Infinite intelligence is equal to Paramatma, God the Oversoul. The infinite consciousness is equal to soul in the beyond. Aham Brahmasmi. So this is the description of the beyond state. Infinite mind with real infinite thinking is the Atma, which is the individual soul, which equals to Shiva, Aham Brahmasmi, and Sahaj Samadhi. So when the mind gets infinite thinking, then it becomes Shiva. infinite mind with false infinite thinking. This is the start. Is equal to Jiva, individual soul embodied as man, Jivatma. And I think this is a better one, right? This para here. When the infinite one does not think, he is in the state of the beyond beyond, which is the Paratpar Parabrahma. When the infinite one does not think of the universe, but only of himself as God, the infinite consciousness, he is in the state of beyond, he is in the state of the beyond, which is Paramatma. When the infinite's mind thinking is real, that is, he thinks of himself as real, Aham Brahmasmi, and thinks of his shadow, the universe, as illusory, he is in the state of Shiva, Sahad Samadhi. When the infinite mind's thinking is false, man is in the state of Jiva, that is in bondage. So the bottom, the infinite mind exhausting all its sanskaras and ending illusion, ending imagination, is the state of nirvana. And from there, if retaining the physical form, you get to the state of unlocking the realization, which is the previous paragraph, the above paragraph, which is he thinks of himself as real and thinks of his shadow, the universe, as illusory. That's the state of Sahaj Samadhi, and then you go further. So I think that's probably helping. Mamaji?
One aspect which comes to my mind is that with the consciousness that we have, we go through this process of, say, jumping from samskaras to samskara and then coming to the end of all samskaras. That is nirvana. So consciousness remains at nirvana without any sanskaras, and this infinite consciousness is it the realization? Super consciousness or consciousness, can we equate that as realization?
Say that again, Mamaji. I'm kind of confused.
No, while we are living like this as human bodies, with say repeated cycles of birth and death, we have say over the period of say out of the 14 cycles, we have completed 7 and we are in the next 7.
Okay.
So that is reincarnation, and probably some of that influence or things like that.
Okay.
So, but what is constantly available here is the growth of consciousness till the human stage, and mature consciousness at human stage, but clouded with all the sanskaras, and we start removing this clouding, and then at the end we are devoid of all the imaginations, all the sanskaras, and that is nirvana. So at the stage of nirvana, there is something which is remaining, that is consciousness, pure consciousness. That is infinite consciousness.
Yes.
So if we go to that stage, that is realization. It is not just becoming, say, nil of all sanskaras, but realizing the self. That is
Correct.
the realizing consciousness.
Correct.
Total available consciousness.
Correct.
Jai Bhau.
But that is also, yeah, one more, if you go one more step, even that is also, as long as you are a human being, you are in that state of God. I am God and I am one with everything in this world.
Yeah.
Once you leave the body, then your consciousness merges and that becomes again Paratpara Parabrahma state. No more consciousness anymore.
Yes, that is
Consciousness
beyond the
is
beyond.
latent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's good.
But it in the beyond state, stage A and B. So from B onwards, we move through all these cycles and come to stage A, which is total consciousness without any appendages, totally.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very
Jai
good.
Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jay Baba, I just wanted to add that there is another stage before we reach Sahaj Samadhi, and that is Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So some souls may reach up to Nirvana, some souls may reach up to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, some souls may reach Sahaj Samadhi.
Sahaj
So,
Samadhi.
so I think we also should keep in mind that it's different stages for different, based on your, it's different stages for different,
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Yeah. In
No,
the
every
first para, there is reference to Sahaj Samadhi, whereas in the we are discussing Nirvana and Nirvikalpa. Good point.
Yeah.
There is a distinction.
Actually, that Sahaj
actually Sahaja
Samadhi
Samadhi
is
is same as God realization.
God realization, but also it alludes to the stage of Sadguru also, because they are aware of both the reality
Both
as well as
illusory and
illusory.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. They are simultaneously aware of both illusory world as well as infinite world. Yeah. Good points, both Ashok ji and Mama ji. So with that, shall we move to the next chapter? Ready for realization?
Yes.
at least in
Okay,
theory.
let's do it. The realization of self. The meaning of the truth is union with God, and this union itself is God realization. The divine state of self-realization can only be attained through the grace of a Sadguru or the avatar. And this grace descends upon an individual only after years of service, slavery, or bunda to a God conscious master.
How do you say this word? Banda or
Right.
Bunda or
Banda.
Banda?
बंदा हूँ
Banda.
मैं गुलाम हूँ.
Awesome. Good catch. Banda. That's what it means.
Banda.
Bunda or
Banda means what?
Attachment not to your
No,
Sanskara, but
no. It's
Okay,
I think
Banda.
Arabic or Urdu. Banda is one who's. I mean, I don't know the exact meaning
Slavery.
in Urdu.
बंदा means person. That's all. हम लोग बोलते हैं ना
Okay.
अच्छा बंदा है. That means he is a good person. That's it.
Okay, but then what's the reference to slavery here? So does it mean it's like a sahavasi or somebody who's along with you in the journey? Something it's probably. I know what you're saying. In colloquial terms, banda is exactly person.
Yeah, Karthik, there is, I think, a song written by Baba himself. बंदा हूँ मैं गुलाम खुदा का. That means I am a slave of my master.
Okay. So there's some reference to banda and gulami.
Yes, correct.
Which is slavery. Okay. But good catch. It's banda surely, not bunda or bonda that you're getting reminded of because it's morning. But yeah, it's just banda. Okay.
The good coconut chutney.
We all should meet once again for breakfast.
Yes.
See, there you go.
Mysore bonda. Isn't there something called Mysore bonda?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm confused about that. I don't know what's the difference between Mysore bonda and Mangalore bonda, but that's a topic for another day. It's like Nirvana and Nirvikalpa. There are two very there's two schools of thought. I think both are the same, but there's two schools of thought.
Both reach the same goal. Both reach the same goal.
Absolutely. Both reach exactly the same goal. Good one. They end up in the same state. Okay, let's continue after that distraction. The divine state of self-realization, and rereading this line, the divine state of self-realization can only be attained through the grace of a Sadguru or the avatar, And this grace descends upon an individual only after years of service, slavery, bandha, to a God conscious master. The realization of self, conscious union with God as God, is the goal of life and the fulfillment of bandha. When a person's limited mind is completely annihilated in nirvana, the consciousness of the three worlds vanishes and is replaced by the infinite consciousness in nirvikalpa. The person becomes God himself and has infinite real mind and infinite divine ego. The first stage of realization is called Brahma Gyani in Vedanta and Majzubiyat in Sufism, meaning drowned in God or merged with God.
Karthik, can I request you to
Yeah,
read that
that's very
again,
interesting.
last paragraph?
Sure. When a person's limited mind is completely annihilated in nirvana, the consciousness of the three worlds vanishes and is replaced by the infinite consciousness in nirvikalpa. Again, this two lines exactly echoes what Mamaji summarized and is a good way of remembering this. When a person's limited mind is completely annihilated in nirvana, the consciousness of the three worlds vanishes and is replaced by the infinite consciousness in nirvikalpa.
I
The
think in
person,
yeah, in God Speaks, I think it was said in a different way. The individual mind, limited mind, is replaced by the universal mind.
Yes. Yes,
yes,
universal and infinite may be the same.
Yeah, probably same. Yeah.
Yes.
Here he's talking about infinite consciousness,
Yes.
their
correct.
universal mind. That's what in God Speaks it says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The person becomes God himself and has infinite real mind and infinite divine ego. The
Mm.
first stage of realization is called Brahma Gyani in Vedanta and Majzubiyat in Sufism, meaning drowned in God or merged with God. Okay, so this is the first stage of realization. Very rarely does a Brahmi Bhut or a Majzub come down from this state of infinite consciousness, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, with normal consciousness of the three words, Sahaj Samadhi, for the sake of spiritual duty to work universally for all beings in the bonds of illusion. Again, more clarity and distinction made out on what Sahaj Samadhi is versus Nirvikalpa Samadhi. I lost power. 1 second.
See, before you search, I just want to bring out a point that I read in Tiffin lectures. Baba said that
Uh-huh.
talking about the circle members, he
Mm-hmm.
gives God realization to initially to one person and later on to some other mandali members. I'm sorry, not mandali, circle members. And that the initial person who received God realization comes back and works with in coordination with the other people who are God realized. But all these people are veiled and they don't have that God consciousness anymore. They behave like a normal human beings. And that is how the avataric work is done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope, but I think very clearly this brings out the difference between Nirvikalpa and Sahaj Samadhi, like Ashok pointed out, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
I hope everybody takes note. I continue.
Yeah.
Those rare human beings who come down to perform universal work are the Sadgurus or Kutubs. Their work is to free souls from sanskaras, which is ignorance. This again was referred to correctly by Mamaji. Despite the fact that the Sadguru has regained the illusory consciousness of the three worlds and of all beings and things in them, the divine consciousness of the infinite remains with him. In the Sadguru, no doubts, desires, or fears exist. In him, nothing is seen except the divine effulgence, Noor, and the Master himself is the effulgence as he personifies infinite intelligence. The Sadguru sees through the divine eye that the three worlds come out of him, his infinite mind, and that this world and the interminable other universes are always before him at his feet. Being infinitely intelligent, there is no sanskaric problem that he cannot solve, that is, annihilate or unwind. And this is not for him, it's for everybody in the universe. The perfect master enjoys all knowledge, all power, and all bliss as the infinite intelligence in human form. Uttama. As the perfect master utilizes his infinite knowledge to manifest the infinite intelligence of universal mind, Mahakarana Mana, he is living the consecration of the soul.
Actually, this is the first
Words,
time I'm hearing the word Mahakarana Mana. I heard
Mana,
Mahakarana Sarir. I have heard it.
Sarir.
Mahakarana Sarir, but I have never heard the Mahakarana Mana.
I have not come across this too, but yeah, but I have not read much, so I.
No, we used to refer to Karana Sharira, but
Correct.
Mahakarana Mana is per
Mana.
time. Yes.
Correct.
Karana Sarira, yeah.
Yes.
Words cannot convey the bliss of self-realization. There is no desire that touches the divine power, and no thought can imagine the divine intelligence. But to convey an idea of it, suppose a man is a pauper and has spent his whole life in misery, ignorance, and degradation. This poor man is deprived of every human necessity, decent clothing, decent food, and drink. He's so wretched that few people can stand his sight. People harass him continually, and he finds little or no sleep. In short, life is a torture to him. If after living such a miserable life for years, suddenly one morning this man finds $1 million near his cot, imagine how great must be his happiness. He may spend and enjoy whatever money can buy. This instance would be considered an act of grace, but not divine grace. Divine grace gives one realization of self, which is beyond anything imaginable. This instance does not convey the real feeling of bliss that one experiences in the realization of one's soul. Realization cannot be described, it must be experienced to be known. Only the experience imparts this knowledge of self. This bliss is beyond imagination. Everyone is God, and there is nothing except God. But because of illusion, man thinks that he is limited. To have an idea of that moment when divine consciousness overwhelms a man in this illusion, take the instance of an old fashioned movie projectionist. Illusion is like a movie. The scenes of life are pictures on the scene. Man's mind is like a movie projector. The film in the projector is like sanskaras in the mind. As the projectionist cranks the movie projector with his hand, at the same time, he becomes absorbed in watching the picture. The projectionist becomes so absorbed in the movie, he forgets that he is the one rotating the mind, rotating the machine, his mind, which projects the picture through the film of the sanskaras. His emotions are swayed according to the different scenes throughout the film. He laughs and he weeps. This man is overwhelmed and forgets that pictures have no reality and do not really exist except as imagination. Now, visualize that suddenly a scorpion stings him, and the pain makes him lift his hand off the machine, which brings it to a standstill with the result that there is no longer any picture on the screen. Instantly, the man realizes it was he who was rotating the projector, and the movie on the screen was dependent on his action, the thinking of his mind. The man's laughter and weeping were a result of his own ignorance of the reality of the situation. Sanskaras are the film that creates the impression of a picture of life before one's eyes. When the sanskaras stop turning because of the scorpion's sting, the man realizes that it is his own impressions that project the picture of creation. Intense and sudden is the experience, like a scorpion's sting that overpowers one who experiences the self. I need to take another pause.
You know, this
Very, Karthik,
picturization.
very good analogy.
What
Yes.
was that? No,
Sorry.
this story reminds me, Bauji. I used to attend every Sunday or Saturday, Sunday, I think. Sunday, he used to broadcast throughout the world, and I used to participate, and he used to chat and talk. And one of them asked question, Bauji, how are you in these last days? How are you spending your time whole day? You know what he used to do? He used to watch these television sitcoms. The night times, all these sitcoms come, in the television. He
Uh-huh.
used to spend a lot of time watching them. Here is the man who wrote about nothing and everything, almost equivalent to God Speaks, spending a relaxation time watching all the soap operas. I thought that was very funny.
Yeah. To beat the illusion, be in illusion.
More illusion. Yeah. Ashok, you were saying something.
Yeah, Jay Baba. I was saying that it's a very good analogy of the movie and the movie projector and the screen. So that's pretty. I mean, it's a very good analogy, and I think there's been a reference to our life being a movie earlier also in our discussions.
Yeah, right. Mhm.
Jay
One
Baba.
small
Indeed.
detail, I think the projectionist in olden times, they used to hand rotate, I think, right? There was no current at the
Yes,
time,
yes.
probably.
No, there was
Uh,
current to projection, but to move the say film, that rotation used to be done by hand.
I remember they
Oh,
used to
so
change the films, right? They used to change the film once a way. There used to be
Yes,
three
yes,
or four
reels. That's
intervals.
why the term reels comes.
Yeah,
They used to have
12 reels.
box which has a round and round rotated
Yeah,
film. So
yeah,
they used to put one end into the slot and move it through all the gadgets and then bring it down to another reel and
yeah.
rotate this so that from the reel above it comes down to the reel below.
Hmm.
So that rotation, we could feel that very early. I think in Arsikere, when we were seeing picture, sometimes the movie used to say go very slow because he is not rotating it in correct speed.
Wow.
Yes.
I've heard of longer intervals pending the reel arriving from another theater where it's
Yes, yes,
being
yes,
broadcast
yes,
at the
yes,
same time, and
yes,
episodes like that. I've heard from mom. Yeah.
yes, yes.
See, what they used to do is they used to say 12 reels, 18 reels, something like that, right? So
Yes.
each reel that fits into a box, all these 18 reels, and this in the movie theater, they used to have a bigger wheel, lot bigger wheel. So what he used to do is he used to put all this film, attach and make it into one big wheel so that it comes from the beginning to the interval. And during the interval, he used to change that big wheel to the another wheel. That's how he used to change and show.
I will show you a box of the reel.
You are missing the whole thing. I think you need to go further away. What is
Okay.
that? What is that?
This is the box containing the movie reel.
Oh, wow. Why do you have it?
Wow.
I'm keeping tidbits inside that. Somehow I got it, and here 35 Can you read that?
No, we can't read it. It's disappearing.
No, we can't read. Yeah,
God. Okay, okay.
because artificial intelligence is looking for your face.
Okay.
So it's ignoring everything else.
Yeah.
Anyway, so by the way, little known facet to Mama Ji, he's a big movie aficionado. He's, I think, part of film festivals or stuff, but I let him talk for himself. I don't.
So how
That's
did he
one more
compare?
facet.
So how did he compare these movie projections? He compared different aspects, right? Sanskaras and Jiva is the movie projectionist, experiencing the story.
Yes.
And the screen is the world, subtle world or whatever. And
The screen is the self. On the self, we move all these different things. And then in the process, we imagine, we forget about the self and imagine or keep ourselves moving ahead with all the things like the gross body, subtle body, and then the sanskaras, imaginations, all these things we think that is the reality and not the illusory thing. So once we realize this and then come out of this uh, uh, jigsaw puzzle, then what remains is the self. That is the movie screen.
Again, different analogies. Ramana Maharishi uses this very powerfully. Here, I think Bhauji is saying it's imagination stops project. I think he refers the life screen to be life or something like that, and sanskaras to be the movie, and till it stops. Basically, samskaras stop, the movie stops, and so on. So variations are there, but it's a powerful analogy, no doubt. Like we all agree. Right. So let's just finish that analogy. It's still continuing. I'll reread from the middle. Instantly, the man realizes it was he who was rotating the projector, and the movie on the screen was dependent on his action, the thinking of his mind. The man's laughter and weeping were a result of his own ignorance of the reality of the situation. Sanskaras are the film that creates the impression of a picture of life before one's eyes. When the sanskara stopped because of the scorpion's sting, the man realizes that it is his own impressions that project the picture of creation. Intense and sudden is the experience, like a scorpion sting, that overpowers one who experiences the self. Because of the overwhelming force of the sting, one is awakened not to pain, but to bliss. It requires such intense pain, like that which comes from a scorpion, to stop the mind to annihilate limitation, but the result is bliss. When these sanskaric impressions stop, the imagination stops projecting on the screen of life, and the mind no longer experiences limitedness. At the moment of the annihilation of limited mind in nirvana, one realizes that he is the real creator and all the universes around him are like pictures, illusory movies, simply the movement of imagination. How can he who realizes his own infinite self laugh or weep at these pictures? How can he have desires when he realizes his imagination created them? In nirvana, one sees nothing else but one's infinite shadow. Even God appears not to exist, but instantly one realizes that this infinite shadow is the nothing, and one's own infinite self, soul, is the everything in the state of nirvikalpa. Now, compare the ocean of mind, infinite mind, with a drop of mind, limited human mind. Imagine the ocean as God's infinite mind, an ocean of mind, and the drops in that ocean can be compared to the ordinary minds of men. The way in which the ocean is limited by drop bubbles, God, the infinite mind, in a similar manner is limited in the human mind by sanskaras. The cause of the bubbles in the ocean is the movement of the water therein, the stir that causes the waves to form. Bubbles exist in the ocean only because the water moves, as limited minds exist because infinite mind must think through an infinite number of minds. Even so, man is the result of the sanskaric activity of the mind, and likewise, he is limited by the movement in the mind. But when one's mind is totally inactive, it is one with God. The human mind is inactive in the sound sleep state. The activity of the mind, sanskaric force, is at a standstill, and one does not think because the sanskaras do not move. In sound sleep, then, one state is like a state of realization of itself by the infinite mind. The ocean is still. The only difference between ordinary sleep of the limited mind and the divine sound sleep of the infinite mind is that the self realized person's infinite mind is infinitely conscious and enjoys eternal bliss, whereas man is unconscious and enjoys nothing. This means that the infinite mind of the self realized person experiences the deep sleep state while in the awake state. When the ocean becomes drop bubbles, the infinite mind becomes limited minds, it forgets that it is the ocean. Infinite mind forgets that it can think infinitely. The knowledge of the state of the drop bubbles and of the ocean is only possible when the drops that are now existing drop bubbles, limited minds, become conscious of their real state of the ocean. Mind must become conscious of itself as infinite. Limitedness preserves the form of drop bubbles, limited minds thinking in illusion, so that the drop bubbles can realize that they are the ocean, think infinitely, and nothing but the ocean, infinite mind. For this realization to occur, the limit of the limited mind must be broken down, or the bubble must burst. To break down that limit in the human mind or burst the bubble is the work of the Sadguru, who has attained infinite mind and embodies the ocean. The Sadguru is in drop form while embodying the ocean. That is, he appears outwardly as an ordinary man. Inwardly, he knows he is God and nothing but God. He knows he is the ocean and nothing limits his infinite mind. To realize God is the goal of life, but after realization, all are not destined to regain consciousness of the gross, subtle, and mental worlds in order to work for the entire illusory creation to advance other jivatmas towards realizing the goal. During realization, one loses all consciousness of creation, illusion, but gains all consciousness of God, reality. To regain creation consciousness, one must come down from the state of infinity to the state of finiteness, drop. To be the ocean, God, in drop form, man form, those who are not destined to regain their human identity come down, yet who stay alive may outwardly look mad, abnormal, but inwardly they are enjoying infinite bliss. Such divine mad ones are the Brahmi Bhoots or Majzubs. They appear mad because they do not relate to normal people or any aspect of mental, subtle, or gross creation. Nothing impresses such a one. They are drowned in God, the ocean, and know themselves only as ocean, not as a drop. Very few God realized human beings come down to normal consciousness of the three worlds of illusion. Among them are those who at times retain gross, subtle, or mental consciousness and at times lose it by returning to the absorption of the I am God state. These very few persons are the Paramahamsas, Majzub Saliks, or Jivan Muktas, Salik Majzubs, or Azad e Mutlaks, meaning the liberated ones. Having crazy trouble with my power this morning. It's been cycling and
Karthik, since we have stopped, since there's a pause, I just wanted to highlight
Sure.
that the part which you read earlier about sleep and consciousness. So there is a chapter in part 2 of Listen Humanity, chapter 2,
yeah,
cycles of sleep and waking. That's quite relevant,
sure.
especially.
So actually, Ashok, now that we're talking about these interrelationships and cross references, I know you bring them up. Are you also noting them down?
No, I'm not. I should note down. Okay, I'll note down. But
so starting today, if you can, and if you think it can be useful for others, why don't you note these down with page references here and the page references that you can update after the call, and we can open up a board for that as well and leave it so that it's useful for anybody. You think that's a worthwhile exercise?
Yes, it is.
I thought of it just when you were talking earlier about the cross references, because you bring up so many beautiful cross references every time. But it's important that we persist and make that available for post call and for others as well.
Correct. Okay. I'll just keep it in mind. I have not done it. I'll start noting from now.
Sure. Thank you.
And maybe go back to the recordings and then probably.
No, that's okay. Even prospectively, if we do it, it's good enough, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Even from the books that we are continuing to read. Yeah.
Correct.
Which I believe we will do many more. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
So
thank you.
I'll pick up and continue. These very few persons are the Paramahamsas, Majzub Saliks, or Jivan Muktas, Salik Majzubs, or Azad e Mutlaks, meaning the liberated incarnate ones, freed souls. The liberated one's consciousness fluctuates in relation to the different spheres of creation, but never fluctuates in the infinite state of I am God. The Paramhamsa or Majzub Salik often loses the consciousness of creation, whereas the Jivan Mukta or Salik Majzub usually maintains frequent connection with creation. The fluctuation is natural as these liberated ones have no specific work or spiritual duty to creation. So subtle difference is brought out between Paramahamsa and Jivan Mukta. The subtle difference being frequency of restoration of connection with creation. What we have learned is the Paramahamsa can dwell in both, but then here it's brought out that the Jivan Mukta or Salik Majzub usually maintains frequent connection, but we'll see if there's more distinction made out below. A very few persons after God realization come down to every state and level of consciousness in the gross, subtle, and mental worlds to work universally. Those very few who make the descent back into illusion are the Sadgurus, masters of truth, or Kutubs, pivots of the universe. The world can never repay the Sadgurus for descending back into illusion for the purpose of universal work. Mankind can never repay the perfect masters for the amount of good they do for everyone in the world. The Sadguru's work, that is, annihilate sanskaras, to make other men immortal like themselves, meaning realization comes to many people from their hands. The Sadgurus maintain a continual flow of self-realized beings, and this continual flow of immortal men and women keeps the minds of others clean and pure, especially the minds of those in the Master's intimate contact. It is this process of these immortal ones on earth that preserves divinity in the world. So I was thinking about it some time back. How would we define universal work? Baba uses this term universal work, right? So what is universal work? I think I just found a good definition in the previous para. But then has anybody thought of what is universal work?
It gives
Anybody?
a universal push to the whole universe. A lot of things we cannot
Towards
understand.
what? No, I like that phrase, preserving divinity, right? The preservation of divinity is probably universal work, right? One of the aspects of universal work is preservation of divinity, right? That stands to get destroyed. And of course, you're right. The universal push, the famous message, the wick of righteousness, as it fades, he comes to give humanity a push, right? Of course, yada yada hi dharmasya. We have heard it in multiple languages, right? That's universal work. But if you're trying to define it, I think one of the good phrases to define universal work is any work that's preserving divinity. Or I think the more tangible part of universal work is pushing or progressing souls in their journeys.
Cleaning up, also we can say cleaning up.
Yeah.
Cleaning up, preserving the the perfect masters are always there. They maintain that divinity. And also there are a lot of agents and the fifth plane and the sixth plane and fourth plane saints. They all work for the God. See, Avatar is like an architect. He plans, and the execution is done by perfect masters and all the hierarchy of the in the God speaks supplement he
Yeah.
wrote. Right? They're all the people who does that.
So could we also add unwinding or annihilation of sanskaras, annihilation of mind, and just
Yeah, so cleaning up the sanskaras is the cleaning up what we are talking about. We
okay.
create dirty sanskaras due to our ignorance. Our goal is something else, and we think because of the ignorance, our goal is something else, our pleasure. That's why we go
Yeah.
in different directions. That's how we create sanskaras. That he cleans up. And he also
In,
gives a push.
yes, as Baba has told, the cycle of 700 to 1400 years. So what happens in the interim period is the say accumulation of newer and newer samskaras unknowingly in the whole of humanity. So avatar comes to at least sweep off all these say newly accumulated samskaras and then allows the individual souls to climb on their path so that they can
Progress.
reach realization. So this is a deep cleaning done by avatar now and then.
Yeah.
So
Deep
each
cleaning.
day we
Yeah.
are supposed to say why the broom and then wipe the house. But deep cleaning we do once in a year or say once in a while, as the lot of accumulation of say adherent sanskaras are there. So this is done by avatar once in a while.
Yeah. See, because of this dirt, there are people in different circles, right? There are different levels. Some people may be in a state like they're almost there to get the God realization. Something is hindering them. That is where Avatar comes and pushes them. And there are some
Yes.
people, let's say they are in Ahmednagar, they want to come to Mehrabad, lower Mehrabad. So he pushes them to lower Mehrabad. There are people who are in Karnataka, Andhra, Gujarat, wherever. They push him to Maharashtra state. That's how at different levels he gives a push so that they are going in the right path.
Great. So there's just a page, so I request that we finish this chapter so that there's a logical conclusion. If
Yes.
we have something that's not clear, we'll again go back. No problem. No rush. One may compare the universes in creation with waves in the ocean, and the foam that the waves produce are the bubbles of mind. Every wave, every universe contains an infinite number of drop bubbles, thinking minds. And to the ordinary drop bubble, the limited mind, the wave bubble, a universe, seems immense. Likewise, the ordinary man living in the world considers the universe to be great. But to the drop who has the knowledge, that is the conscious experience, that it is the ocean, infinite mind, meaning it has no bubbles limiting it, the whole phenomenon of the universe is a passing show. That drop knows that all the waves, bubbles, and other drops are the same ocean it has become. Some drops last for a short while and some for a long while, depending on the condition of the bubbles. But they cannot be without the ocean. The drops always remain one with the ocean, for the ocean is the drop's very existence. And eventually, every drop comes to know this, for every drop is meant to be the ocean. The human being should understand that he is not the limited creature that he thinks himself to be, but is the one who resides in the great ocean. Ordinary man cannot forget his bubble state of consciousness, but the man who understands that the goal is to realize God forgets his bubble state by remembering God, the ocean. To renounce the thought of the imaginary world outside is to remember that the phenomena called world exists within the house of the mind, and that mind exists within infinite mind. This renunciation is actually renunciation of the false thinking of the limited mind. But it is impossible for the individual to realize this truth by himself. So, he who wills to know the infinite must remain holding to God. This God is in human form through the avatar and the Sadgurus. He who attempts to know God shall inevitably grasp that to escape this imaginary existence created by his own sanskaras requires nothing less than all knowledge. The divine knowledge is personified as infinite intelligence, and this knowledge exists in the avatar and Sadgurus. Those who know this much are holding on to him who is God. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. On that note, let us hold on to him who is God in the hope that we get this realization and move from being the bubble to the ocean.
Rightly said. We have to hold on to his daman very, very firmly.
Yes.
That is our goal. That is our goal, to get God realization. We don't know that.
Karthik, you said in the hope, but make it as in the knowledge.
Okay. In the knowledge, yes.
Yes.
The hope is more for urgency. Knowledge is firm.
May includes, may not be. That is the problem.
I know. Hope excludes certainty. So I restate that. Yeah.
Yes.
We want certainty in the journey. So on that note, we'll stop here. Good to see you back, Ashish. And are you in Pune? Are you in Mehrabad still?
Jai Baba, Jai Baba. I back to Pune. Yeah, I back to Pune this
okay.
week.
So you vacated your home and moved. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I moved back to Pune again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just stop recording and we can ask Mama to tell us about his Mehrabad experience, and then we can wrap up in 5 minutes. So how did it go?